Hey everybody, it's John Hope Bryant, founder, chairman, and chief executive officer of Operation Hope. Operation Hope has got a movement in the suites to follow the movement that was in the streets. It's about civil rights. It's about really lifting people up economically, the new definition of freedom, which is self-determination. You cannot self-determine yourself in the modern world without understanding the language of money, without understanding economics and empowerment and changing your life. This movement is embedded in a larger context. And I've said before that we're sitting in a moment in history. But history never feels historic when you're sitting in it. It just feels like another day. The last video I did today was really on negative energy. And I think it really undermines your dreams. It undermines your ability to reimagine your life and to go forth in spite of the problems, in spite of the pain, in spite of people disappointing you, in spite of people actively rooting for your failure. I get people rooting for my failure every day. But you've got to have really a wealthy mindset. And I don't mean wealth in the sense of money. I mean the word capital comes from the Latin root word capitas, which means knowledge in the head. It has nothing to do with money. So you've got to get your mindset right. And there's something that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and wealthy people actually have in common. There was a study of the wealthy recently that showed that after 5 years, one thing that turned wealthy people off was a negative mindset. It absolutely turned them off. Negative, self-defeating mindset absolutely turned them off. Well, Dr. King really was an optimist, and he dealt with all kinds of people. I'm honored to know Bernice King, his daughter, to work with her as she's CEO of the King Center, to know his other children who are really incredible people who are trying to continue that legacy in their own way. To really be a play son, Ambassador Andrew Young, who was Dr. King's lieutenant in the civil rights movement. He's our global spokesman at Operation Hope. So this is the last movement of Dr. King that nobody really knew about. So Dr. King really wasn't about black people, okay? Don't get upset. Of course, he loved black people. But really, here's what Dr. King said, and this is what made him different from everybody else. He said, "I'm here to redeem the soul of America from the triple evils of war, racism, and poverty." And he didn't say I'm here to save black people. I mean, by the way, you do that, you get everybody else wrapped up in that, including black people as well. What I would say today is you deal with class, you get race for free. So we end up arguing over race and racism and all this stuff, which really is as old as life itself and world history, and it's hard to solve any of that, and we get so exhausted we never pursue our dreams. But Dr. King was very focused, and he had a strategy. He tackled racism, succeeded in that. Tackled war, the Vietnam War. Some of you know that he was very adamant about being against the Vietnam War, and while he was really criticized at that time, we all now know in retrospect he was absolutely right. And then he tackled poverty. And what people may not know is that there was 3 civil rights bills. People know 2 civil rights bills, the Voting Rights Act and the Civil Rights Act. You may not know that Dr. King went and lived in a housing tenement with his wife in Chicago. This was something that actually Reverend Jesse Jackson was involved with earlier on, called Operation Breadbasket. But later on, this was called the Poor People's Campaign. And the Poor People's Campaign was really about eradicating poverty in America as we know it. And it was about, by the way, raceless. It was about poor whites, poor blacks, poor Latinos, poor Asians, poor Indians, poor others. There were more poor whites in America than poor anybody else, a little known fact in the Appalachians and the rural areas. But anyway, Dr. King was really focused on this issue of poverty eradication. And as a Southern liberal minister of the gospel, he had a theory of redistribution of wealth, essentially. Well, that was one of his theories. And that didn't sit very well with those who had wealth. And some would argue that he was killed. I did a piece, a video, actually with Dr. Boyce Watkins, you can watch, where we talk about why Dr. King was really killed, our theory. But he was probably killed over this last movement because he was talking about, as a Nobel Peace Prize winner, basically one part of his philosophy was redistribution of wealth. I'm not talking about redistribution of wealth. I'm not a pastor, I'm not a preacher. I'm a businessman and an entrepreneur. I'm talking about a creation of wealth. There's enough poverty to go around, and there's enough wealth creation to fill every cup, in doing it in a responsible way. I'll do another piece another time on, I think, what the next big economic boom is going to be in the world. I think it's going to be saving the planet. Laura Seidel, thank you for your work there, Ted Turner's daughter. I think that the environmental reformation, reclamation, and revitalization and sustainability is going to be a huge multi-trillion-dollar industry. Later on, talk about that. So in 1968, Dr. King was on his way to Washington, D.C. for the Poor People's Campaign, the first march, and he was called forth to Memphis for the sanitation workers strike. And he got there, and Dr. King said this: You cannot legislate goodness. You cannot pass a law to force someone to respect you. And the only way to social justice in a capitalist country is economics and ownership. I'll repeat that. This is Dr. King's words. You cannot legislate goodness. You cannot force someone to respect you. The only way to social justice in a capitalist country is economics and ownership. Now, some of my friends out there would say, well, I hate capitalism, I hate America. Okay, well, I tell them, you know, okay, America's not perfect. Okay, you find me perfect. You find me a perfect country, I'll wait. It doesn't exist. Oh, I hate America. Okay, move. Go to Haiti. All right, go to wherever you think is perfect. Go to Cuba. Go to you know where in the world do you Sudan? Where in the world do you think is perfect? Then get up and move. Ain't nobody moving. I say ain't on purpose. Nobody's moving because this is actually a good deal. America, I've been in 100 countries. It's the most amazing place on the planet. Where else could a young black kid like me from South Central LA and Compton, California, from parents who didn't have much, we've been doing so much with so little for so long, we can almost do anything with nothing in our family, to build a global enterprise and to serve presidents of the United States and to basically live my dream. No other place on the planet, right? Couldn't happen in France. And that's where the word entrepreneur comes from. The word entrepreneur is actually French, but probably the toughest place in the world, no disrespect intended to my French friends, in the world to be an entrepreneur today is France. So America, with all our problems, is an amazing, beautiful place. You know, you think about this thing we call a democracy, and then Dr. King fought very hard for this. But, and this was really, you know, part of the magic of what made him so successful also. Where else in the world can you go and curse out your president? I mean, go to China and try to curse out the head of state. You will disappear. Go to Russia and try to curse out Putin. You will disappear. You try to do that in Latin America. You will disappear. Only in America can you go up to the gates of the White House, rattle. No, I don't suggest you rattle them, but say you disagree passionately with the president, and go home and your girlfriend say, hey girl, I saw you in the news last night. You were cursing out the president. I said, don't curse. But you were talking about, yeah, girl, and I had a good time. Now, what's for lunch? You can go on about your life. That is possible because people like Dr. King and Andrew Young gave their life. They're not black leaders. They're American leaders. It is a disrespect to limit them to a black box. Without Dr. King, what Dr. King did, and he was the only black leader. People say, well, why are you talking about Dr. King? There's other leaders. Yeah, but he was the only black leader talking to white America. It's easy to be black and talk to black folks and feed the pain. You know, somebody once said, if you think you're a leader and there's nobody behind you, you're not a leader. You're just a guy out taking a walk. Or put another way, some leadership is get in front of the crowd and make like a parade, and just wherever the anger is going, you take it there. But Dr. King reimagined a world that involved everybody. And Andrew Young once told me his dad said to him that racism is a sickness. You don't get angry with sick people. You try to help them, otherwise the sickness may come on you. So they had a very unique philosophy. They never marched after 3 o'clock. I think it was 2 o'clock because they needed time for the media to get the film in a can. Because back in that day it wasn't digital, it was on a film, on a plane to New York by 5 o'clock news because they needed the media, the movement broadcast. So Dr. King didn't want to deal with money early on because he thought it would distract the movement. They were already calling him a socialist and all kind of the crazy stuff. And so he really set this up to be the last symphony. And there's a really great video of Dr. King talking about economics that is not well known. I encourage you to Google it. I'll try to put it in the comments if I can find it. But this guy was really a prophet, and he was a prophet for our time, and no different than the framers of the Constitution and those who fought for our independence from Britain, the first revolution of our spirit of America, really the Civil War champions led by Lincoln, the second iteration, Frederick Douglass and others, and really Dr. King, Andrew Young, and others were the third symphony of freedom in America. If they hadn't done what they did, there would not be an America today. There would not be a President Obama for sure. And there would not be a nation that's a leader of the free world that's known for freedom and self-determination and opportunity. So we really owe a great deal of debt to him. And I personally have put the hope inside at Ebenezer Church and put up $1 million plus through our partners, actually like $1.5 million with Reverend Raphael Warnock, to do it at Ebenezer because I wanted to pay my debt, my sense of responsibility back to these heroes that came before me, to say thank you to all of them and to carry it forward. Now, we're sitting in a moment in history right now. Now, I mentioned to you that Dr. King lived in Chicago, and there were 3 movements, right? There were 3 pieces of legislation: the Civil Rights Bill, the Voting Rights Act, and there was an Open Housing Act. Do you know in 1965 you could not live where you wanted to live? In 1970, even many people, there were covenants and mortgages and whatever. If you were black or Jewish, you couldn't buy a house in a certain neighborhood. So he went and lived in a housing tenement in Chicago. There's a marker, historical marker there about that. And it was he says the most brutal campaign he ever had. He was hit in the head with a brick. It really frightened him. It was different from the racism he experienced in the southern states. Anyway, he got to Memphis and gave his last amazing speech in this regard. And he was killed April 4th, I believe is the date, 1968. Really, in the same month as Lincoln was killed 100 years before. And so it's not like we're dumb or we're stupid. We never got the memo on free enterprise and capitalism. It's what we don't know that we don't know that's killing us. It's not like we've used free enterprise to set people free and it didn't work. We never got a chance to use it. We never gotten that far. That's my mission, is to finish what Lincoln and Dr. King tried to set forth in my own humble way by creating an infrastructure of resources through Operation Hope. Really Hope Inside locations, Hope Business Box Academies, Hope Internship America schools, or Internship America programs in schools across this country to really help set us free in this new age of what I call civil rights. But all credit goes to Dr. King, who gave his life, and he said, if you don't know what you're willing to die for, you aren't fit to live. And so we really owe an incredible debt to this man, and I have worked hard with the authorities in Memphis to get a marker set up in the Memphis airport to acknowledge Dr. King's last trip. He traveled 200,000 air miles a year, and when you fly into Memphis, you don't realize that was the last time he got off a plane. And the next time he got off a plane, or came back to that airport, he was in a casket with Coretta Scott King and Bernice King and others really taking his body back, and Andrew Young taking his body back to Atlanta. And it touches my heart every time I go there. I'm heavy every time I go to Memphis. And so we got a marker going up in the airport to acknowledge that for the first time in all these years. And I want to thank those who did that, moved on my recommendation in Memphis, the Memphis city authorities in the airport there. And I think First Tennessee Bank's going to finance the cost of it, so I want to thank them for doing that. Okay, we're at 12 minutes. I don't want to keep these videos long. This was just a historical sort of a snapshot that follows on the Freedmen's Bank. So you got to go back now and watch the Freedmen's Bank video I did, because all this connects together. It helps you to understand that really this movement's, the economics has always been in our lives. I'll give you one other little tidbit. So I didn't tell you where the third piece of legislation was actually filed. After King was killed, President Johnson, who's the best president we ever had for social justice, by the way, doesn't get any credit for it, but he signed all the bills. Dr. Kennedy did not sign the bills. There's no disrespect intended to him. Kennedy was charismatic, but it was Johnson that signed a Civil Rights Bill, the Voting Rights Act, and then after King's death, he got Congress to sign the Open Housing Act, which is HUD, Housing and Urban Development, which is why you can live anywhere you want today. So we are really leading to a new movement in the suites, not just the streets. Here's a little factoid. Dr. King's dad, Daddy King, they call him, their co-pastors at Ebenezer Church. Did you know he served on the board of a bank for 40 years? Nobody knows this. It's Citizens Trust Bank. He served on the board of a bank for 40 years. Reverend Warnock, this is where he really got me to say yes to this Hope Inside at Ebenezer. John, did you know that Daddy King was a banker? So civil rights and civil rights occupied the same household in the King household. And Dr. King worked for free. How do you work for free and get a PhD in 1957? Because your daddy and your mama financed it, so they were not broke, which goes back to my point about you have to understand money, otherwise you'll never be free. Okay, I'll leave you with this. I'm going to go to some comments. I'm going to leave you with this. Watch how you live your life. It may be the only Bible that anybody else reads. I hope you've enjoyed this. Let me see what the comments are. Please let us know when the marker is completed in Memphis. I will do that. Dick Gregory said, Jarvis said, I didn't learn hate at home. I had to go to school for that. Wow, that's deep. Rest in peace, Dr. King. April 4th is also Dr. Maya Angelou's birthday. His good friend agreed. Asanga, thank you for joining. Shika from Ethiopia, thank you for joining. Are you working on a new book? I love your previous two books. Yes, Love Leadership is my first bestseller. There's a book called How the Bank of the Future was before that. How the Poor Can Save Capitalism is my last bestseller. I'm working on a book called The Memo for BK Barrett Kohler publishing right now. The Memo. So working on that. I have a new nonprofit in South Georgia that's focused on education. This is Javar. Okay, I'll read that later. It's a long comment. Women have laws in place to live safe. Not so true in other countries. Yes, in America that's true. By the way, you know the number one reason why women stay with abusive men? Money. Yeah, all over the world. So financial empowerment and financial literacy is so true. Thanks for your work. That's Jack. Thank you. Bridget, thank you. Karen joined. Clifford, the work you're doing is great. Thank you very much. Scott Dollarhite, my racing buddy, joined. He just won a third place award win in his Lotus racing. I was there with Natasha watching him at COTA. God bless you. All right, love you guys. I'm out. We're at 15 minutes, one of my longest videos. Thanks for being over 1 million views on this series. Tell me what you want me to talk about in the future, and I'll add it. I'm going to add that Dr. King video in the comments. Peace and light.